We are witnessing the first generation in human history to be raised not by a village, and barely even by parents, but by an algorithm designed to maximize retention at the cost of cognitive development. Walk into any restaurant, any airport terminal, or any public waiting room in the Western world, and you will see them. They are recognizable instantly, not by their distinct fashion or their slang, but by the glassy, fixated stare locked onto a glowing rectangle. This is Generation Alpha, the cohort born entirely within the 21st century, the first true natives of the digital landscape. But to call them natives implies a sense of agency, a sense of exploration. What is happening to them is not exploration. It is extraction. We have pathologized their behavior, labeling them with terms like iPad kids, mocking their short attention spans or their chaotic humor, but we have failed to identify the mechanism behind the curtain. We look at a 7-year-old screaming because an iPad was taken away, and we see a tantrum. A sociologist looks at that same child and sees a withdrawal symptom. This is not a failure of discipline. It is a success of engineering. The behavioral patterns emerging in Generation Alpha, the staggering rates of myopia, the delayed speech development, the inability to engage in imaginative play without external visual stimuli, are not accidental side effects of modern life. They are the calculated results of a business model that realized the human brain is most malleable and most profitable when it is developing. Consider the statistical anomaly of the glassy eye phenomenon. Optometrists are reporting a radical spike in nearsightedness among children under 10, a condition previously associated with intense academic study in young adulthood. But these children aren't reading encyclopedias. They are consuming high-contrast, high-saturation, rapid-fire video content that changes scenes every 2 to 3 seconds. This is the cockamelon effect on steroids. The pacing of children's entertainment has accelerated to a velocity that the adult brain finds jarring, but the developing brain finds intoxicating. Older cartoons, the ones millennials and Gen X grew up with, had narrative arcs, pauses for dialogue, and static backgrounds. Modern algorithmic content, specifically designed for Gen Alpha, eliminates the pause. It eliminates the breath. It creates a seamless stream of sensory input that bypasses the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control and planning, and wires directly into the dopamine receptors of the basal ganglia. This is why the reaction to removing the device is so visceral. You are not interrupting a movie. You are severing a neural connection to a dopamine drip. The screaming, the physical aggression, the absolute inability to self-soothe, these are not signs of a spoiled generation. They are the symptoms of a brain that has been trained to expect constant, high-velocity reward for zero effort. We are seeing a generation where the baseline for stimulation has been raised so high that reality itself feels boring. A walk in the park, a conversation at dinner, a puzzle. These analog experiences cannot compete with the hyperstimulating algorithmic feed. Consequently, reality is rejected. Teachers are reporting a crisis in classrooms not of intelligence, but of presence. Students physically present but cognitively absent, unable to focus on a singular task for more than a few minutes without the itch for the scroll. The literacy statistics paint an even darker picture of this cognitive rewiring. While literacy rates have been fluctuating for decades, we are now seeing a specific type of decline, the decline of deep reading. Gen Alpha can decode words, but the stamina required to follow a complex narrative, to retain information over a long chapter, is evaporating. This is the skim culture codified into biology. When a brain is trained to expect a payoff every 15 seconds, a paragraph that takes 30 seconds to read feels like an eternity. The neural pathways required for deep, contemplative thought are being pruned away through disuse, replaced by the superhighways of rapid visual processing. But this is not just about screens. It is about the specific nature of the content being fed to them. We observe the rise of brain rot content, surreal, nonsensical, recursive memes and videos that lack narrative logic but possess immense visual stickiness. To the adult observer, it looks like gibberish. To the algorithm, it is perfection. It keeps the eyes on the screen. And that is the only metric that matters. We must stop viewing this as an entertainment trend and start viewing it as a harvesting operation. The tech giants and media conglomerates are not trying to entertain these children. They are trying to colonize their attention spans before they are old enough to understand what attention is. The scary part is that this colonization is happening during the critical period of neuroplasticity. The brain develops based on what it is used for. If it is used to swipe, to react to sudden noises, and to process hypersaturated colors, it builds the infrastructure for that and only that. We are effectively building a generation of humans optimized for consumption and reaction, rather than creation and reflection. The iPad Kid is the MVP, the minimum viable product of late capitalism. They are the perfect consumer in training. Impatient, easily stimulated, terrified of boredom, and completely dependent on an external device to regulate their emotions. This is the silent crisis. It isn't the climate and it isn't the economy, at least not yet. It is the physiological alteration of the human mind on a mass scale. And as we stare at this phenomenon, judging the parents or mocking the kids, we miss the terrifying reality of the architecture underneath. Is not built on malice but on a far more dangerous foundation, the mandate of infinite growth within a finite marketplace. To understand why Generation Alpha is being harvested, we must look at the economic wall the technology sector hit roughly a decade ago. By the mid-2010s, practically every adult in the developed world had a smartphone. The market for adult attention was saturated. There were no more hours in the day to extract from the working population. The tech giants needed a new demographic, one with abundant free time, malleable preferences, and zero defense mechanisms against psychological manipulation. They needed children. For children, it meant deploying the most aggressive form of operant conditioning known to behavioral psychology, the variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. This is the same psychological mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. You pull the lever and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. The uncertainty of the reward releases more dopamine than the reward itself. In the context of Gen Alpha's media diet, the lever pull is the swipe. When a child swipes up on a short-form video platform or lets the autoplay feature load the next video, they are gambling. They don't know if the next clip will be funny, scary, loud, or boring. That microsecond of anticipation triggers a dopamine spike. It is a digital Skinner box, and we have placed an entire generation inside it. The algorithm doesn't care about the content of the video. It only cares about retention time. It is a race to the bottom of the brainstem, prioritizing the reptilian brain's reaction to noise and motion over the mammalian brain's desire for logic and story. If a video of a screaming animated toilet keeps a 3-year-old's eyes on the screen for 12 seconds, while a slow-paced educational video loses them in 5, the algorithm promotes the toilet. However, to strictly blame the technology companies is to miss the broader economic ecosystem that made this harvesting possible. We cannot talk about the iPad Kid without talking about the exhausted parent, and we cannot talk about the exhausted parent without addressing the economic brutality of the 21st century. The parents of Gen Alpha, primarily millennials, are the first generation in modern history to have less wealth than their parents. They are navigating a housing crisis, stagnant wages, and the collapse of the third place, affordable, safe public spaces where children could once roam. In this landscape of economic austerity, the tablet is not a luxury item. It is a survival tool. It is the cheapest babysitter available. Late capitalism created a problem. It demanded that both parents work full-time, often with side hustles, just to maintain a baseline standard of living, thereby stripping them of the time and energy required for traditional child-rearing. Then it conveniently sold them the solution, a glowing rectangle that costs $301 time and guarantees hours of silence. The iPad is the pacifier for a generation of parents pushed to the brink of burnout. They designed their products to be the path of least resistance. This created a symbiotic loop of destruction. The economy drains the parents defer to the screen, and the screen harvests the child. But what exactly is being harvested? We are mining the raw data of human development. Every swipe, every pause, every skip is data point feeding a neural network. These children are training the very AI models that will likely replace their future job prospects. We are seeing the emergence of kidfluencers and unboxing content that blurs the line between entertainment and consumption entirely. A child watching another child unbox a toy is not watching a narrative. They are watching a commercial disguised as a playdate. This bypasses the skepticism filters that adults have. The desire is implanted directly. This is why we see Gen Alpha obsessed with skincare products, high-end tumblers, and specific brands before they can even do long division. They are being groomed into hyperconsumers before they have any concept of money. The system relies on the invisibility of its harm. If these apps caused physical bruises, there would be riots. But because the damage is internal, atrophied attention spans, dysregulated emotional control, and the commodification of imagination, it goes unnoticed until it is too late. The legal frameworks like COPPA in the United States are woefully outdated, designed for a Web 1.0 world where data collection meant asking for a name and address. They were never built to regulate the algorithmic extraction of behavioral psychology. The tech giants know this. They operate in the gray zones, pushing the envelope of what is ethically permissible because the fines for breaking the law are merely a cost of doing business, a parking ticket on the road to trillions. This system is self-perpetuating. As these children grow, their tolerance for slow-paced, low-stimulation environments decreases, forcing educational institutions and entertainment industries to speed up. We are redesigning society to fit the broken cognitive patterns of the harvested child, rather than protecting the child from the breaking. Cannot be undone by simply deleting an app or confiscating a tablet. We have crossed a Rubicon of neurological conditioning, and we must now look soberly at what lies on the other side. The future of Generation Alpha will not be defined by a sudden return to the analog past. The genie does not go back into the bottle. Instead, we are barreling toward a future defined by a new and brutal form of inequality, the analog divide. In the 20th century, having access was the privilege. In the mid-21st century, the dynamic has inverted. Access is now the baseline. Disconnection is the luxury. We are seeing the early signs of a society where the ability to opt out of the digital ecosystem is a status symbol reserved for the wealthy. Silicon Valley executives, the very architects of the harvesting algorithms, are famously sending their children to Waldorf and Montessori schools where screens are banned and blackboards are the primary technology. They know what they built. They are selling digital opium to the masses while keeping their own families clean. On one side, we will have the digital serfs, a massive underclass of workers whose cognitive functions have been permanently altered by algorithmic harvesting. On the other side, we will have the analog elite. This smaller group will be raised with guarded attention spans, taught to read physical books, and trained in the arts of patience and deep focus. In an economy flooded with cheap, AI-generated content and distracted workers, the ability to focus on a single complex problem for 4 hours without checking a notification will become a superpower. Deep attention will be the scarcest resource in the global economy, and therefore the most valuable. The parents who fight the exhausting war to keep their children off the algorithm today are not just preserving their childhoods. They are securing their future economic sovereignty. However, for the families already entangled in the system, the solution is not Luddism. We cannot smash the machines. We must adapt to them with a stoic resolve. The path forward requires a radical reframing of what attention actually is. We need to stop viewing attention as a renewable resource that replenishes every morning and start viewing it as a finite currency, the only currency that truly matters because it is the currency of life itself. Every minute spent on a brain rot loop is a minute of life sold to a corporation for zero return. This realization is already sparking a counterculture. We are beginning to see the rise of neo-Luddism among the older cohorts of Gen Z. We see the resurgence of flip phones, dumb phones, the revival of vinyl records, and a growing disdain for the polished, fake aesthetic of the algorithmic feed. There is a hunger for friction. The algorithm removes all friction. It plays the next video automatically, it smooths the skin filters, it predicts the text. But humans need friction to feel alive. We need the awkward silence in a conversation to learn empathy. We need the frustration of a difficult book to learn perseverance. The cure for the harvesting of Gen Alpha is the reintroduction of boredom. Boredom is not a defect. It is the evolutionary catalyst for imagination. When a child is bored, the brain is forced to look inward, to construct new worlds, to problem solve. To save this generation, we must be willing to let them be bored, to let them be uncomfortable, and to let them scream through the withdrawal symptoms of the dopamine detox. It is a painful process, but it is the only way to reclaim the neural pathways that have been paved over by Silicon Valley. It is a painful process, but it is the only way to reclaim the neural pathways that have been paved over by Silicon Valley. Furthermore, we must prepare Gen Alpha for a world where their humanity is their only leverage. As artificial intelligence automates technical competence, coding, writing, calculating, the unique value of the human being will retreat into the realm of the interpersonal, the emotional, and the philosophical. The educational priority must shift from information retention, which is now useless, to emotional resilience and critical philosophy. They don't need to know facts. They need to know how to navigate a world where facts are hallucinations and reality is a deep fake. The tragedy of the iPad kid is not that they use technology, but that technology uses them. The device is not the tool. The child is the tool. Flipping this dynamic requires a conscious, daily act of rebellion. It means treating the algorithm like a wild animal, useful if tamed, deadly if left to roam the house. It means recognizing that the feed is not a public square, but a private casino designed to bankrupt your mind. We are standing at the precipice of a cognitive evolution. But if we fail, we risk a future where we have connected the entire world, only to find that there is no one left at home to answer the call. The screen is lit, the video is playing, but the eyes watching it are empty. That is the harvest.